another minute or two talking about open government and the alternative email account during our State of Play segment. Stephanie Hansen, former Newcastle County president and now with the law firm of Young, Conaway, Stargate and Taylor, is here. And we also have Michael Stafford, attorney, columnist, and contributor to MSNBC, is here as well. So Stephanie, I want to start off with you first. What's the balance between privacy and open government in this case?
Well, I don't think that it's that it should be surprising to anyone that there are two email accounts, because you have one as a public official that you should be discussing public business in. There's another that you should have as a public official where it's a personal email account where you're back and forth with your wife about, do you need me to bring home bread today? Is Jimmy's soccer practice still going to be at 5? And for campaign information that goes back and forth, because you don't really want to mix the two. I think the problem is that we've heard is when you've got an account you're discussing public business, but yet it's not the state.de.gov or whatever it happens to be. I think the line is, if you're discussing public business, it needs to be accessible to the public. So there needs to be a way that information, if it finds its way onto an account that is not the public account that's FOIA-able in some way, you need to take that information and drag it into a folder where it can then be accessed by the public.
That's interesting.
But look, Stephanie, I mean, it's a state.de.us email account with not his name attached to it, but Alan Jackson or whatever. I could come up with better pseudonyms, pen names if I was governor. But regardless, it's a state.de.us email account, which means it's a public email account. Right. And anything that is subject to FOIA that's in that account is discoverable. I mean, citizens under our law can get access to it. So conceptually, I mean, it's not any different than jack.markell@state.de.us. I mean, I understand the logic behind having a separate account. I imagine that if you're governor or you're a high-ranking official, your email probably fills up with spam on a daily basis. You must get hundreds of emails from random citizens groups, people asking for favors. So I can see the need for a separate account that not everybody has, where high priority items go. That makes perfect sense. But to then argue that somehow, because it's a different account, it's not subject to FOIA or the contents are somehow more protected, that to me is probably not a line that you can hold.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. I mean, I hope I didn't come
No,
off sounding like that I was saying that it wasn't FOIA-able. No, any time that you're discussing the public business, whether it's in your state.de.us gov account or a personal account. I mean, it goes so far as if this is in your personal account and it is and you're discussing the public's business, it needs to be something that the public has access to. And maybe where it comes down to is when someone sends in a Freedom of Information Act request, they want to have all documents related to the blank file, the name of the project. And then it's up to government to discover, to figure out, which is a morass, I suppose. Where is that information going to be? Is it all going to be just in our state email file? Is it now, do I have things in my personal file or in the pseudo state government file that are addressing that as well? Because that's all stuff that the public has a right to know.
Yeah.
Thin line for sure.
It is. I mean, that Stephanie's point, it is a morass. I think many of these laws, both the FOIA statutes, other records access statutes that apply to like schools like FERPA, a lot of this was designed in the pre-electronic record era. And it's not necessarily as well adapted to the realities of the world we live in today, where, in the past, the late 80s, the early 90s, what kind of documentation is going to be discoverable through a FOIA request? Formal correspondence, letters, reports, that sort of thing. Whereas now, you've got these email accounts with hundreds and hundreds of emails that have to be sifted through by people trying to generate a response.
And that's really the thing that I think most people don't understand. And we deal, as in the legal field, with document requests all the time.
Okay.
And so when you send in a request for documents, the paper documents themselves, that may be 10 or 20% of the actual documents that are involved. The other documents are all electronic. So you've got probably 70 to 80% of the material that's a document is in electronic form. And the ability to access that and get to it is tremendously costly and time intensive. And it comes down to then who's going to decide what the search terms are to get that particular information and then how to get it. So this is a huge area that we're starting to wander into with public information, and I think we're going to be talking a lot about it.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely be discussing it, hopefully, again. Well, let's stay in Dover. The News Journal's Jonathan Starkey reported this week that there may be a gas tax plan in place in a couple of weeks. Is this the idea of borrowing let me start off. Is the idea of borrowing and taxes a compromise everyone should actually support?
I think it's a good compromise. I think now is probably the best time to actually push through a gas tax if that's what the governor wants to do. And my understanding is that the numbers as far as our revenue are not going the right way compared to the budget that is being floated out there. So the gas tax that didn't pass in an election year may pass this year, plus the gas prices are fairly low at this point. So
I hope they stay low.
I hope they stay low as well. You know, nobody ever wants a new tax, and there's never really a good time for a new tax, but probably a better time than most is at a time when the current price is low, and that would be now.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably necessary. There's going to have to be some movement there. Whether there's political will to do it, I'm not sure. I mean, gas prices did come down. They are kind of inching back up, and with the chaos in the Middle East, it's hard to predict where those prices are going to be 6 months, 9 months to a year from now. I remain, I mean, every time we bring up taxes on this show, I almost feel compelled to say there's this thing called progressive taxation. Gasoline tax, some of the other kinds of taxes we seem to fixate on in Delaware are all a bit regressive. They're going to hit people with less ability to pay the hardest.
Yeah.
Progressive taxation, and you can do these kinds of taxes in a progressive way. Finland does, so it's not impossible anyway.
Well, always a pleasure to have you two on set. Stephanie Hansen,
Thank you.
Michael Safford. Hope to see you soon again next month.